All right. Well, welcome to the August 2026 edition of Merge PHP, an online and in-person meetup of various PHP user groups around the U.S. Represented by, well, Kansas City, Las Vegas, San Portland, Seattle, Austin, Boston, Atlanta, and Utah. We also have this wonderful wall of various meetup logos. If you are in one of those areas, check to see whether your local meetup has an in-person simulcast of Merge PvP if you're watching this online. We think that having folks meeting up and talking together about things locally is the fact that the PHP community we're going to miss out on that. Also, we don't want you to miss out on a license for JetBrains products. Whether you're writing code on your own or have a computer do it for you, JetBrains continues to have excellent set of development environments fit for purpose for that across various languages. Right now, I'm actually dealing with a fair amount of Python stuff, so PyCharm is coming in really handy. I've been using PHP since I don't know 2013 or so. When I was doing Golang was in there. And the nice thing about this license raffle is, first one to email gets a license for your pick of one of JetBrains tools. Again, still a great supporter of the PHP community, and we're happy to have them showing their support in this way. As a reminder, we have two currently active versions of PHP, 8.5 and 8.4. We have a few versions that are security fixes only. And anything beyond that, you're kind of on your own. So if your Linux distribution backports fixes, or if you have a expensive license from Zen, you might have support for an older version. But backward compatibility is a strong suit of PHP. Chances are good that if you have something running on an older version, it's not going to take much effort to bump it up to a newer one. Go ahead and do that. Make sure that you're on preferably the latest version, but certainly one of these that has support. So there are a fair number of PHP conferences around the world at this point, plus some that are more kind of Drupal WordPress related or that sort of thing. You can see the list here. We got WordCamp in Phoenix in just a few days here. Laravel Live, DrupalCamp Colorado, API Platform Conference, DrupalCon in Europe, WordPress Accessibility Day online, and then Longhorn PHP, which I'll get into here just in 1 second. We got Joomla around the same time, IPC in Munich, WordCamp, New England, etc., Laravel Day, and then the next conference after Longhorn that is kind of generic PHP that's in the US is PHP Tech in Chicago. The CFP is open for that one. I believe they're trying to land things earlier than usual, so the CFP actually closes at the end of this month. Dutch PHP conference is in March of next year, actually. There. So, speaking of Longhorn PHP, it is Thursday and Friday, 2-day conference this year, October 15th and 16th. Make it to one day, make it to both. You can buy a ticket for either one day or both. You have a tutorial on Thursday that's got 5 sessions total, one of which is a full day tutorial on kind of refactoring and modernization, and then got a variety of other presentations on other tutorials and workshops on that day. Then Friday, we have a couple of keynotes, including from the director of the PHP Foundation, Elizabeth Barron. And that day we'll have 15 talks across 3 tracks, plus the 3 keynotes, plus open spaces session. Tickets are available, a schedule is posted, and if you grab a ticket tonight, there's an extra $25 discount. This applies whether you're grabbing an in-person ticket or an online one, which means that the online tickets actually have a better price on it than the Blind Bird, because I was too lazy to do 2 promo codes, one of which would have been a lower amount for online. So grab your tickets tonight or throughout the coming weeks. We're putting this conference on for the community, and we want you all to show up. So Merge PHP is on various socials. The most reliable one, which if you're watching this live, you already know, is YouTube. We are also on the Fediverse in Mastodon, PHPC Social, newly upgraded at Mastodon 4.6.6, I believe, as of this morning. And then we're also on the site formerly known as Twitter. So you can follow us there, but again, look at YouTube as the best place to know when we're going live. If you want to see upcoming events or previous ones, then you go to mergephp.com. Also, several of us are around on Discord on phpc.chat. Hang out there along with the rest of the PHP community, as well as there are a few PHP Foundation channels in there as well. If you have a talk idea, slots are filling up for the rest of the year, but go to mphp.io/speakers, submit something there, or just ping us on socials with what you would like to present about. Whether that is a full-length talk or a lightning talk, we'd love to see it. Speaking of looking at previous issues of this meetup, if you go to phpc.tv, which is another site in kind of the PHP community network of things, thanks to sponsorship and generous blood, sweat, and tears from Anna Felina, who kind of runs the infrastructure on that, you can view both back issues of Merge PHP as well as a ton of other PHP-related video content ad-free, for free, at phpc.tv. We don't do live streaming there quite yet, but we'll eventually get around to it. For now, it's just YouTube only for the live feed, but we automatically syndicate over to PHPC TV. So once these streams are done, you'll see recordings of all of our meetups there. Next month, we've got a talk about, well, throwing the bot army, specifically the Anthropic flavored bot army, at all the things by Matt Trask. You can find more information on that on mergephp.com, or you can very quickly read the description here. And that will be, as usual, second Thursday of the month, which this time around will be September 10th. With that, we come to tonight's presentation with Nick Vahalik, at which point I'm going to leave this up for a second as I take myself off screen entirely, and then turn it over to Nick to talk about what the future of source control might be that's better than the thing that Linus Torvalds built a while ago, or something like that. I'm just going to try and be as hot of a take as possible before handing it off to Nick. All right, and I'll flip to yours. All right,
All
all
right.
yours.
Thank you so much, Ian. Good evening, everybody. So tonight our discussion will be about Jujutsu. And it is, in some sense, a new take on version control. It's actually been around for a little while, but it has not gained a lot of traction yet. Um, but that's all right. So we're going to talk about it and we'll get started. So my name is Nick. I'm a senior backend engineer at Rentvine. I work on platform and AI stuff, and I have been doing PHP a very long time, since PHP 3. And so um, I've enjoyed coming to Longhorn PHPs for several years. So appreciate the ability to sit down and be able to talk about this with you all this evening. So who is this talk for? Um, if you value flexibility, if you like having options, if you want to ship stuff fast or just build a lot quickly, or you want to ship things out of order, or you don't really know what you want, or maybe you're just a nerd and really enjoy version control systems, this hopefully will be for you. And we'll talk about Jujutsu here in a minute. But before I want to talk directly about Jujutsu, I need to talk a little bit about uh, what I want to leave you with, and also kind of the background about what the issue is. So if you're unfamiliar with the Git internals, this is not going to be a deep dive. This is going to be kind of a shallow dive, but you wouldn't really want to dive shallow. But we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the basics, enough to get to the point where hopefully it will be clear what the issues are and why Jujutsu is, in a sense, so world changing. So ultimately, what I want you to come away with is Git has some limitations that chain you down. Jujutsu frees you from those constraints. And hopefully you'll have the desire to go and try this yourself. I can't get into all the details of Jujutsu. That would take a long time. But hopefully this inspires you to go and install it and get hacking on it. So what are the issues with Git? The first thing is that Git commits are immutable, which means that anything like fixing a typo means rewriting the history. And if you have to rewrite the history because commits are immutable, if you have commits that depend on those commits, you now have to cascade those changes down to the descendants. That can cause branches to drift, because now all of a sudden, if you have a branch on top of something that you need to rewrite, it requires manual rebasing. And this means that stacked changes are painful to manage, and really working on top of anything that hasn't been merged into main can be risky and awkward if you need to make a change. Because once you commit something, you're committing to it. And that's not always the way that we work. Sometimes we need to figure things out or get to the end and then realize we missed something or whatever. So we talk about having options. We want to be able to do and have that Git the history, the commits, the story that we're telling with those things to be as accurate as possible. And Git kind of gets in our way in that it doesn't make it easy to do that. Also, any sort of really advanced workflows tend to basically where we run out of road or run out of runway. It gets really unwieldy. Things like multi-parent merges, which if you're unfamiliar with those, that's going to be exciting, where you can build on top of several branches at once. But as we kind of have come into this agentic age where people tend to work on a lot of things, and agents give you the ability to experiment with multiple different pathways, or even just work on a lot of different codes, you probably are familiar with using Git work trees to be able to do some of that. But even then, there are still limitations with that. Jujutsu enables you to be able to work on a whole lot of different things at one time, but still be able to build in ways that with traditional Git, you just really can't do. But we'll come back to this later. So what do we want? We want the ability to make commits small and meaningful. At least that's how I want them to do. I want to be able to ship stuff really fast. And I want each commit to tell a story. It should be clear, reviewable. And I want to be able to reorganize and refine that story as I go. So if I'm working on something big, I want to be able to chop that thing up and maybe ship this part of it first, or be able to kind of, refactor this and not have to worry about messing everything up. I don't want to encounter pain with that. And Git makes this hard, but in Jujutsu, this is the default way of working. And I really could hardly ever go back to Git now, having worked with Jujutsu for over a year. So let's talk about why this problem exists. So Git stores its history as a DAG, or a directed acyclic graph. So each commit has a pointer to its parent. And that information is then used to generate the hash of that commit. And so if you change anything on the commit, if you just change its message, or you change its parent, or anything you change, the hash changes too. And then every other commit that is built on that will also go through and also has to be changed. And so that's when we talk about the cascade, that's what happens. Amending a commit doesn't just edit that commit. It requires you to then change every commit afterwards. And so let's say that you're working on something and you find a typo in a particular revision. Now you can go in and say get rebase -I, which is probably the parent commit, and then mark it as an edit, save, quit your editor. It will start. The Git rebase will start going through things. It will pause on that particular commit. It'll let you make whatever changes you're going to do. You can edit the commit message, for instance. And then once you're done, you grbc or git rebase continue. And now you've edited that commit. But under the hood, what has happened is that you've now changed that commit ID as well as all the subsequent commit IDs. And so you now have these old commits, which are orphaned. They exist in the ref log, but you can't access them anymore. And you've amended all of these commits. Now these commits are the new correct history. And this isn't a big deal if this is what you're working with. But if you happen to go through and have a branch on top of this, it gets more complicated, because now your branch that was off of, say, this previous, that was on the tip of that refactored branch, it now points to a commit which no longer exists. And if you have a team member that was working on it or whatever, now they have to go through, they have to go find that new commit ID, and they have to rebase their changes on top of that commit ID. And that's a manual process. And that's just for one branch. What if you had lots of branches? This is the core. That very thing right there is where Jujutsu comes into play. What can we do about this? So Jujutsu is a Git compatible VCS. It actually will sit on top of Mercurial and Git, but for our purposes, we're just going to be talking about Git. You may hear me say JJ. JJ is what most people talk about. Jujutsu. If you try Googling Jujutsu, you're going to get a bunch of Jujutsu Kaisen stuff. I have no idea what that is. It's just there. Be aware of it. But if you do JJVCS, that will normally help you get the right, narrow down the search results. It is actively maintained by people at Google. So it's part of their open source program, but it is not necessarily like an official project. It's just it's a bunch of Googlers that work on it. And it will fundamentally change your relationship with code. And most importantly, and the key thing here, is it introduces a new concept called the change. So you have commit IDs in Git. Jujutsu introduces what's called a change ID. And this change ID never changes with an asterisk. But for the most part, just roll with me on that. It never changes. And with Jujutsu, your graph starts to look like this. So you have your commit hashes, and you have your another thing called your change IDs, which are stable. And so let's say that you actually want to go do the very thing we just did, and you want to go in and change this CDEFGH change ID. And the change IDs are always going to be alpha. They're not going to be alphanumeric. They're not hashes. They have a different hash, and I don't know how they get the names, but there's never any numbers in them. So in Jujutsu, you could go in and just say JJ edit, and the revision that you want to edit, make your changes, and then go back to whatever else you were doing. That's it. What happens to the underlying data? Well, the change IDs don't change. The commit IDs change. That's what this is right here. But there's nothing orphaned. There's nothing missing. You've made that change. The underlying get structure has been updated. Your view really doesn't look all that different, but it's taking care of rebasing everything for you. So before, right, you do the get rebase I, don't have to do any of that. Just edit the commit, make a change, and go back. That's it. Rebases are fully automatic. So the cool part is that this frees you from commits. And now you can organize your code however you want. This is Nano Banana's understanding of being freed from the chain of commit IDs. So I'm going to go into a brief introduction of kind of three big things with Jujutsu, and then go into a much more kind of a real life example workflows of kind of what you can do and how it would work. So the first thing to understand in Jujutsu is you are always in a change. Because JJ is constantly maintaining your kind of managing your get stuff for you, you never have to really commit anything. It's in your repo now. So if you've ever done anything where you've been working on something and somebody pings you on Slack and says, hey, could you go look at something? And then you do get checkout and you forget that you're working on something and you didn't get stash or you didn't whatever. And then like you have this like mess, like that doesn't happen in Jujutsu because that change is being committed basically all the time. So when you do things like JJ log or you do JJ stat or status, it's constantly committing that work for you into the graph. So you never have to worry about losing something because it's always going to be there. The current change is always denoted by an @ sign. So you may see that in some of the other graphics that are coming along, but that's the change that you're currently editing. And there's no get add, there's no get commit. When you're ready to add like a commit message, you do JJ describe, or you can do JJ describe -m, and it'll just create the message for you, and it'll pop up in that description field. And when you're ready to do a new set of changes, do JJ new. So you can continue to edit as much as you want, change the description as much as you want, or the commit message as much as you want. It doesn't matter. JJ is going to take care of all that stuff for you. Rebasing is easy peasy now. So again, editing commits or editing something instead of having to do a get rebase -i, it's as simple as JJ edit and tell it which revision you want to edit. There's a lot of the things, like if you're familiar with things like JJ or get fix up, or there are some additional add-ons for things like squashing commits and other things. JJ, that's all like first class in Jujutsu. So let's say you're editing a particular commit and you're like, I want to just make this commit and the previous commit one commit. You can just do squash and it will put it together. And now your previous change will have both changes in there. Your rebases are automatically done. There are options to be able to rebase a particular change and all of its descendants. So you can rebase, for instance, here, if we rebase M, if we want to rebase M onto O, we could just say, hey, go put M onto O, and it will rebase all of M onto O. You can rebase a single change. So let's say you have a bunch of changes in a row, a chain of changes. You can pull a single chain out, like, I don't know, you're working on a change and you pull out the docs or a temporary set of temporary files that you're like, I don't really need that. You stick it all into a single change, and then before you push your PR up, you pull that change out, stick it on the end, or do whatever, and you can just move an individual set of changes around. You can rebase a whole branch. So you may be looking at this and going, well, isn't this the other command that was up before? This is a little different. If you're used to working with branches where, like, let's say you have something tagged on the end or on the final, the what do they call it? Well, the end of a particular set chain, you can reference that, and it will basically kind of smartly go in and move whatever that points to and all of its ancestors back into whatever target you're targeting. Now, this is where things get really interesting. JJ also has the ability to kind of insert and reorder things. So you can take a commit or a set of commits and just say, hey, insert this after this commit. And this will basically take the descendants of that commit, and it will reorder them and like insert it into another chain. So if you have a particular set of commits that tell a particular story, you can have it do that. You can also have it insert something before, and just to say, hey, I want to stick this one before this other commit. You can also combine before and after, and you can say, hey, I want to put this into this after this commit, and also before, or this change, and before and after these particular changes, which is actually how mega merges work, which we'll talk about in a second. But point being here is that you have lots of flexibility to be able to just rearrange these changes however you want. The other really, really cool thing about Jujutsu is the operation log. If you've ever oopsied really hard, it is almost impossible to lose changes in Jujutsu because there's this thing called the operation log. Everything that you do, every snapshot you take, every rebase you do, every time you go and you pull get changes, all that stuff, there's a log. And if something happens, you can go in, query that log, timestamps, descriptions, and you can say, hey, I need to go in and I need to restore that operation. Let's say you accidentally abandon a commit, which is kind of like just deleting it. You can go in, find that abandoned commit, and then you can just restore it. So it gives you a lot of, you have a lot of safety nets inside that, if you've ever done this, if you ever had to go through the ref log in Git, woof, JJ makes it a breeze. Derek, I see your question, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more towards the end, but they're called conflicts. So we'll talk about that, absolutely. So, okay, that's all fine and great, but let's talk about some real life examples. So I mentioned that I was working on some platform work at Rentvine, and one of the things that was kind of a challenge for me was I was working on a lot of stuff that was very risky, and I was constantly, I had these like really big things that kind of blew up, and I needed to be able to figure out how to ship my changes in very small, very compact things that the other leads could look at and go, okay, I get this. And so I had to spend a lot of time kind of, whenever I would work on a bunch of things, I would be constantly challenged to like upstream the littlest bits that I could, just to kind of continue to make progress, because I didn't want to necessarily have to wait for, even if it was a couple of days. I wanted to be able to get stuff merged in as quickly as possible. So here, kind of an example was I was working on a test harness, and another one of my coworkers was like, "Man, that's great. I want to use that test harness in what I'm working on." So in this particular instance, what I had done was I had the test harnesses that I was working on as part of a larger body of work, and basically what I did was I said, okay, I'm just going to export my test harness changes in its own change, and I'm going to PR that separately. And so that's what I did. I used JJ Split to take this base test file, so just a PHP unit base test, put it on top of main, and just add the description to split off the assertions. So I was adding some assertions to this, and that's it. Those changes are now in a separate commit, and I can go ahead and I can PR this. So in JJ, there are no, the concept of branches are technically don't exist. They use bookmarks, which are kind of just like tags in a sense, but kind of goes beyond it here. But you go in and you set a bookmark, and you say, "Hey, I want to make this over here UBT. I want to bookmark this," which is kind of like creating a branch. I push that up, and then I can just use GitHub PR to create my PR, and now I have that PR. And so I can ship that stuff upstream and I can let somebody review that. But there is a problem, sort of. My tests are now broken. I've pulled those changes out of my PR, and I either have to rebase off of that branch, so stick it on top of that other PR, or wait until that PR is merged and then pull in main again and then rebase. But not with Jujutsu. So with Jujutsu, you can be really impatient. And the work that I was working on, I just rebased it on top of not only main, but also my feature branch that added those new assertions. So basically, I've done the merge, but rather than just taking those changes and adding them into my branch, I'm essentially working on those changes as if that PR has already landed. So I can continue doing anything that I'm doing, and now that work is in a separate PR. It can be reviewed separately. I can continue working. But it doesn't stop there. With Jujutsu, it's really easy to create a parent for a change that sits on top of multiple commits. So we have 2 branches right here, but that's not, we don't have to stop at 2. We can do more. So let's say that you're working on that stuff, and while you're working on your changes, you realize that, hey, I need to update some composer package. So you go ahead and you update the composer package. Well, you can go ahead and split that change off the same way that you split off the change for the other tests or for the assertions. And now you go in and you say, hey, I want to rebase the parents. I want to basically say my commit, my adding tests now has a parents of main, the assertions PR, and the updating of the test library. So all 3 of those are now parents of the current work that I'm working on. So I'll have all those changes, but each of those can still be separate PRs. And I'm sitting on top of all 3 of those commits. So what happens if main updates? So people are working, stuff gets merged in. Maybe my stuff gets merged in, maybe it doesn't. JJ rebase onto trunk will actually make sure that any work that's sitting on top of main, as main moves, it will update it and point it and rebase it correctly. Now, it is not guaranteed that rebase won't necessarily, again, have some sort of a merge conflict, which Jujutsu calls, they call them conflicts. But Jujutsu actually has something called what are they called? First order conflicts. So if you've ever done a rebase and you have a merge commit or something like that, Git stops the world and makes you go, you fix this right now. You can't do anything. Jujutsu is way cooler. Jujutsu says, it's okay. There's a conflict here, but if you want to come in and you want to mess with it now, great. If you don't, I'm not going to mess with it. And you can actually then just fix it later. So, but you have the capability, the flexibility to go in to update main. And if there's a conflict, then you fix it. If not, then you're free to continue doing what you're going to do. So let's say you keep working and your PR hasn't merged yet, and you add another assertion to your test harness. Not a big deal. You can then go in and say JJ absorb. And what JJ absorb does is it kind of works like git fixup does. But what this is going to do is JJ is going to look at your previous work and go, well, you already edited this base test file in this new add new assertions PR or commit. And so it will go in and find that change file, and it will update that commit, the underlying commit, with that additional change. And that is now when you push the next time, those changes will get pushed back up, and you've updated that change without having to go in and do any other additional work. Now, a little bit of a note here is, whoops, there we go. So if you notice in the previous screenshots, there are purple change IDs and blue commit IDs. So if you look at the way that works, you'll notice that these they both kind of look purple, but these numbers are these change IDs on the left never change. But over here, after we did the JJ absorb, you'll notice that adding tests and the new assertions, those commit IDs changed, but the commit IDs of the other two did not change. So this allows you to see the underlying Git commits are changing, but the JJ change IDs are not. So why mega merges matter? You saw right there, I had three separate paths. I had main, and then there was another branch for the assertion changes, and then the bump. What is important to understand is that if you have no merge conflicts where that merge point all meets up, your parallel mega merge threads are guaranteed to be merge conflict free. So if you've ever worried about is this gonna cause a problem when all of this stuff gets merged in? If there are no conflicts at what we call the mega merge point, it's guaranteed to be conflict free, assuming that it's still on the correct, like you're working on main and main is up to date. So you can upstream work often. You can generate small focused PRs. Reviewers can see clean, minimal change sets. And you can literally upstream a bunch of changes in seconds. It's amazing how quickly you can just do all this. And this scales. You can have as many of these parallel threads as you want. I think there might be 14 or 15 in this particular one. This is an actual screenshot of of actual code at Rentbind that I was working on. This was all stuff that had been upstreamed and was basically waiting on stuff to get merged in. And all of the stuff eventually landed, but I was able to just pull stuff out, upstream it, PR it, and then let it get done. Once you have that merge point, so you can see this, there's kind of this right up here at the very top, there's this one singular choke point, which is what we call the mega merge. Anything above that mega merge is considered WIP. So any experiments you're doing, generally speaking, these don't get pushed up to Git. They don't, not necessarily, because Jujutsu will not push a commit up that does not have a description. So it doesn't have a description, it won't get pushed. And oftentimes the mega merges will not. But you can work on as many stuff as you want. And each of those individual commits are living in a world where all of the commits underneath in the mega merge have landed, if that makes sense. You can do stacked PRs with Jujutsu with JJ Vine. No relation, not a Rentbind thing, just what they call it, JJ Vine. It does things. It will update your commit messages and make sure that your GitHub PRs have good descriptions and are all linked correctly. So when I first gave kind of an initial version of this talk, this did not exist. But Git is kind of sort of catching up. There are some new Git features. So even if you're not, you don't necessarily feel like you want to dip your toes into the JJ stuff, there's also, there are some new commands like git history reword that making commit editing, like especially the messages and stuff, better. It's still not the same as being able to do what JJ does, it's kind of a normal operation, whereas this is a special thing. But uh, people with Git are starting to realize, like, man, the ability to go through and to do some of this and have the rebases managed for you is actually really cool and really helpful. They are conceptually similar to Jujutsu, but they rebase some things automatically, but it's still not the same. So you're not going to find parity with it at any time soon. And I think the Git history, if I'm not mistaken, is still marked experimental. It's in Git 2.55, if the LLMs can be trusted. So just be aware, if you're running on an older version, you may not have that. Um, a couple of caveats. If your team uses Git merge, this is a problem because Git merges create new commits. And if you're in GitHub and you do a merge, that commit will not have a change ID when you pull it back down, and it can confuse the heck out of JJ. The JJ team is working on it. They're working on something called JJ Git Sync, which is supposed to solve a lot of this, but it's a hard problem. So if you use rebases, shouldn't have to worry about it. But just as a heads up. And if all else fails, you can always fall back to Git. JJ sits on top of Git. If you ever feel like, man, I have no idea what I've just done here, you can switch out JJ, go back to Git, do your stuff, and it will allow you to keep going. JJ Vine is a good tool. JJ UI is a TUI for navigating Git changes. And honestly, between Claude, JJ UI, and RevDiff, I really hardly ever leave my console anymore. I still do use PHP Storm. And there are actually two Jujutsu plugins for PHP Storm that allow you to be able to navigate some of the logs, like use annotations and stuff. It's still not as good as some of the other capabilities that the regular Git integration has. But if you use PHP Storm, there is a Jujutsu plugin for that. I'll figure out a way to get these links shipped to you. You obviously can't see these, but this Jujutsu mega merges for fun and profit. Isaac has a really great article talking about this. And it was actually in talking with him that inspired me to kind of start presenting this to some teams. So check that out. And then if you're interested more in the whole thing with what they call Git rigor, it's a really great article about just kind of the issues of what refinement looks like when you're trying to work on something and get the code out of your head and into a repo. And go ahead and install JJ. You can do brew install JJ for if you do that. There's a Discord, really helpful Discord, really great Discord. Once you get it installed, do JJ git init in any repo and get going. You can't mess it up. So, questions? So Derek, if it's doing a rebase under the hood, how does it handle merge conflicts? So if there is a merge conflict, what it will do is it will mark that particular change as conflicted. And you can use any of the existing tools that you would normally use to go in and to resolve the conflict. And if you're not doing it in a mega merge, where you can sometimes have umpteen number of conflicts, or more than two-sided conflicts. I have my JJ resolve set to open PHP Storm, and I use the merge system in PHP Storm to handle those merge conflicts. You do not have to immediately solve the merge conflicts, though. So if you do something that causes a merge conflict, you can put it off until later. I have entire branches that are all full of merge conflicts, and I just don't mess with them because I'm not ready to go back and touch that code. How does JJ compare with Git Butler? I don't know. I have not used Git Butler. If memory serves, Git Butler might be a little bit more aimed towards being able to make like stacking, stacking better. Now that GitHub has the stacks, like there's a lot of questions I have not looked into very much. So I'm sorry, I don't know exactly because I've not used Git Butler. Can one member use JJ and others use Git? So it sounds like JJ is a layer that happens locally only. Is that correct? Sort of. So when you edit, and I don't know how much time I have, so let's see here.
You got plenty of time. Go ahead.
Okay. Give me 1 sec. I forget the exact command. So 1 second. I'm gonna do. There is a way. So basically, when you the actual change IDs, if I'm remembering correctly, the actual change IDs are actually stored inside of the commit itself. I want to say it's stored either as a trailer or as a as some sort of a header. So when you are pushing code, the change IDs should be a way. I believe there's a way you can actually see it if you look at. Okay, I think you have to do get cat file commit and then do. Yeah, here it is. So so here's an example. Like for instance, right here, you can see that when I do get cat file commit, so this is the current commit that I'm working on, this change ID, which is this change ID here, this YYSXQ, this is actually part of the commit information, the metadata. It gets pushed to GitHub. So if there are multiple people working in Jujutsu on a team, GitHub will not destroy this data. It will keep it along and it will pass it through. It's part of the immutable properties of the commit. And if you've never looked up Git trailers, that's really cool stuff. But you can add metadata. GitHub will not remove it, and that's how it knows what this change ID is. So it is part of that. It gets pushed to GitHub, and so no, it's not technically local only. It will get merged up, and it will be there. But you can use Jujutsu even if you're the only person on a team, because this is an additive piece of information. Git will just ignore it, and it will be, normal depressing Git for everybody else that's not using Jujutsu. If you don't resolve the conflicts, the code basically looks like the code that you would see in in a rebase. So it will have these things. It'll just have the. It will have what are called the JJ conflict markers, which are really similar to the way that you would see the conflicts in a regular Git repository. And if you look up, there's some great articles and great documentation. And Steve Klabnik actually has some docs that he's written on this. But the code will just look like this, where you'll see these conflict resolution markers, and it'll just sit there until you fix it. I'll
All right.
leave open for a couple. If you have any more
Yep.
questions, and
All right. I think the stream has caught up. So with that, I think we're good. Nick, thanks so much for presenting on Jujutsu.
hope it
And
was helpful.
yeah. And
Awesome.
thanks to everybody for tuning in um, for this month's edition of Merge PHP, and we'll see you at the next one.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.